Despite being a relatively young club, FC Kobenhavn have established themselves as a Danish footballing powerhouse. Formed from a merger of two clubs in 1992, they have gone on to win the Danish Superliga an impressive 14 times. Despite this dominance in Denmark, they have struggled to stamp their authority in the European competitions. They did reach the quarter-finals of the Europa League as recent as 2020, but they lost to Manchester United after extra time. They're a club with a reputation for being a wonder kid factory, and in FM23 they start off with three brilliant young prospects. Can we use these wonder kids to build a dynasty and improve their European exploits? Or will the wonder kids get poached off by European elite? Let's find out as we rebuild FC Kopenhagen. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Big thank you for joining me on another video right here on YouTube. So today I'm going to be kicking off another brand new rebuild right here on the channel, as we are going to go off to Denmark and take charge of FC Kopenhagen. Now obviously that is FC Copenhagen if you're here in England, but if my Danish is incorrect, feel free to correct me in the comment section down below. I'm pretty sure I've been practicing my pronunciation of Kobenhavn and I've got it close. But obviously, if I haven't, you'll see in the comment section everybody telling me I am incorrect. Now, FC Copenhagen are a team that have interested me for a little while. They have been a team that has been dominant in Denmark for quite a while. Despite being a relatively young club, they have managed to get to the top of Danish football quite quickly. They are consistently in European competitions, but they are always looking for that next step to push them on. So that's where we're going to step in. We're going to kick off by going into Season 1, and we're going to put some rules in place to try and make this rebuild kind of a bit more interesting. We are only going to be signing Scandinavian players, and that means we can pick them up from anywhere in the world. You will see a few familiar faces coming back to Danish football, I am sure. And also, we're going to try and develop from within the country, and anybody who comes through our youth academy or is at the club already, we will continue to use them too. So, an interesting prospect at hand. I really do think this is going to be a fun rebuild. Let's jump into FM23 as we kick off with a little introduction of FC Kopenhagen. Here we go then, guys. We have fired up a brand new save game in FM23 and we have installed ourselves as manager at the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen, Denmark. So we're going to have a little walk around the club, show you what the club is about. Starting off in the top left hand corner, we can see they have a 3.5-star national reputation. They have a 4-star finances, which is labelled as secure. In terms of the training facilities, they are labelled as great, and they also have great youth facilities. They have excellent academy coaching, and they have exceptional youth recruitment. Now, those are going to be important because, as I said, just with the rules we're going to put in place of only signing Scandinavian players, or we're going to try and develop from within inside of the club, it means that really any youth intake that we have is going to have to really be exceptional to make it to the first team, and having those exceptional youth recruitment, those excellent academy coaching and the great youth facilities are all going to try and help us push forwards as we get the next generation of Danish players into the save. Now obviously doing it within 5 seasons might be a bit difficult. We might see a minor amount of players at the start come through, and I think one of the first things that I will look at doing is who are in the academies already and see if we can push them into towards the first team and get them some experience at the start of the game. But obviously, as we go through, we're going to have to try and develop whilst purchasing players of a high reputation from outside of the Danish league. Going to the bottom of the screen, you can see that their captain is Zeka. He's described as a tenacious midfielder by the media. If we have a little look at him, you can see he's 33 years old. He is a tenacious midfielder, valued at £800,000 to 1.7 million. It says he's an important player in his prime years. One thing I do notice straight away is it says injury prone. Yeah, he's come from the Greek league, so he's played for Panathinaikos. He has also played in Portugal. I think he's a key component of what the team has been about so far. But obviously at the age of 33, I'm not too sure how many years he will have left at the club and if we're going to use him too much. So yeah, there's one there to watch just in case he gets moved on quite quickly. And then our hot prospect is Mr. Rooney Bardji. Absolutely fantastic prospect, and I know in real life FC Copenhagen have just tied him down to a not massive, but it's a bigger contract extension. Says there his contract was due to expire on the 31st of December 2023. I think he's now signed on to 2025, so it's good news for the club because he's going to be an absolute worldie of a player. You might have seen him if you've been here before, because I've already signed him for Coventry and I signed him at Dortmund, so you'll know that coming to Kobenhavn is basically to use him and the other two youngsters that I'm going to show you further on into the video to see if we can just build this dynasty and to see if we can progress them in terms of the European competitions. So a quick look around what they have achieved. So they have won 14 Superliga titles, the most recent coming in 2022. Yeah, obviously going to push forwards into 22-23 to try and add to that total. Now, of course, FC København are the biggest team in Denmark, or one of the biggest teams in Denmark, and it means that this should be pretty achievable from the outset. It's not really the main objective, if I'm honest. I want to see if I can have an impact on their European footprint and to see if I can progress them and move them forwards in terms of their reputation in a global way instead of just with inside Denmark. But if we're not winning the league every season, I fully expect to be sacked. They have won 8 Pokalunds, I think we're going to go with. 8 of those, most recent in 2017. Now, I guess the expectation will be there to go and add to that tally. They won 2 Royal Leagues in 2005 and 2006. And I can't quite read what that is if we slide this along. They have won 3 Danske Supercupen. So I don't know whether that's been taken away, but 1995, 2001, 2004 suggests they haven't played in the competition for a long time, so it's something that is there. But as I said, the one thing that is missing is any form of European competition, and that's the big one we are going to go looking for. So they play at the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen, Kobenhavn. You're going to get a hybrid of these, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to try and stick to Kobenhavn, but if Copenhagen does slip in, you have to forgive me. It's not my natural thing to say Kobenhavn, but I will try as much as I can. So the stadium was built in 1992, which coincided with the European Championships and was also the league inception date. I think the Superliga was formed in 1992 or was merged from the old league system in 1992. It's got a grass surface. It's a very good stadium condition, and it holds 38,065 in terms of its capacity. So it's in Kobenhavn. Facts about the club. So the youngest player is Rooney Bargi. The oldest player is Zeka. The average age of the club is 24. Shortest player is Rooney Bargi. You've got the tallest player is Andreas Dithmer at 6'6". Average height is 6 foot. Lightest player is Bargi. The heaviest player is the goalkeeper, Camille Grabara. Average weight, 11 stone 11. Interesting to know. Top earner at the club is Andreas Cornelius. Lowest earner is £875, and that's Valdemar Lund Jensen. Average wage of 8,300. Highest caps, Matt Ryan, 74. Average caps of 7. So not really producing the players that are going off to play international football. Nationalities represented within the club, 16. They have a 61% domestic player bias. Current internationals, 8. No under-23s, 8 under-21s and 6 under-19 internationals. So if we have a little look at the finances, now bear in mind that we have the first transfer window turned off. That is the reason that it says our transfer budget is 0. So any transfer dealings you see at the end of the first season are going to be January transfer windows transfers only. I just think it gives us a fairer option to get to know the squad that we inherit, and I also want to be able to give everybody fair playing time to see who I need to move on and the areas that I need to strengthen in early on. But the club does seem to have a good overall grasp of its finances, as £45.4 million as an overall balance, and the profit and loss from this season is £13.5 million. So we are going to get 100% of any transfer revenue that is made until 68 million has been made. Now, I'm not looking to sell anybody straight away, I will be honest. If there are players that leave the club, it will be because the offers are too good to turn down. And in terms of the youngsters at the club, I want to sign them down to contracts as soon as I can. Let's have a quick run through of the squad that we inherit at the start of the game then. You can see we have two goalkeepers. We have Grabara and Dithma. Matt Ryan is at the club, but for some reason he starts the game in the B team, so we will be looking to promote him as soon as we can. In terms of centre-backs, we have Lund Jensen, Koklava, Vavro. We have Dix as a right wing-back. Nikolai Boylson as a left-back or defensive player who could play left and central. Then we have a number of wing backs: Ankersen, Sorensen, Victor Christiansen, who is the next player that I want to highlight. Another one that you might have seen me sign in various rebuilds along the way. I think he's going to be a staple of most teams that are rebuilt in Football Manager 23. He's dirt cheap, valued at just 4.1 to 6 million pounds. Now, lucky for us, he has a contract that ties him to the club until 2025. We will look to exploit that as much as we can. Moving on, we have Gellart. Then in the middle, we have Rasmus Folk, who is a bit of a folk hero. He is a club captain and a bit of a legend within the team. So he's played 167 times, scored 17 goals in real life. We then move on to Lucas Leragar. We've got Marko Stamanic. He's another player who is coming through, 20 years old, New Zealand midfielder, who it says at the bottom isn't far away from first team football, but we will actually look to try and get him in, I think, and get him some first team football. We have the aforementioned Rooney Bahaji. I think Bahaji, I'm never sure what it is. I was convinced it was Barji, and then I've heard somebody else pronounce it differently, so it's Barji. Anyway, Rooney Barji, 16 years old. What a talent. Contract expires at the end of 2023. As I said, in real life, they have renewed it. So my first thing to do is going to be to renew his contract. He's another player that you will have seen in previous rebuilds, and he goes on to be an absolute star. Moving down, Isaac Johansson is another one. Obviously, is a player that is going to develop into a fantastic midfielder, already valued at 7 to 10 million pounds. And at the start of the game, he's already wanted by Chelsea, Manchester United, Borussia Dortmund and Milan. Hopefully, he will go in nowhere. This one could be a bit of a hard sell to keep him at the club, like selling the club to him, or just basically ignoring every request that he puts in to leave the club. I want to keep him here. There will come a time where I will have to look. If he doesn't sign a new deal, 2026 is on the radar before the end of the save. If we can't convince him to sign a new deal, there will be a time we will move him on, but I will let you know straight away. We are looking to keep hold of those three wonder kids. The rest of the squad, we have Haraldsson, Ozakson, Clayson, Mohamed Darami. He is a player who is on loan. He's on loan from Ajax. I think he will probably stay for the season, but it depends on who we want to sign as to whether that might be terminated early. And then up the top of the pitch, we have Paul Mukairu. He's a Nigerian, 22 years old, described as a winger but can play as a striker too. And then at the top of the pitch, we have Andreas Cornelius. He's a player you might recognise from the English game. He signed for Cardiff once upon a time, and I think he got labelled as a flop, but I just don't think he really adjusted. He has scored goals in other leagues. He had 13 goals for Parma, 15 for Trabzonspor, and he did go back to Kobenhavn after leaving Cardiff and got 28 in 91, so not too bad there. So the squad starts off in pretty good shape. We are going to look to probably bring one or two players in January if we get the right funds, and then we'll see where we go from there. In terms of the tactic we're going to be using for this rebuild, it's called MHSC34. You may have seen a tactic testing video on it already on the channel, and it was recommended by Hold My Heim on TikTok. I come across one of his TikTok videos and basically asked, where did you get the tactic? I wanted to test it. It performed quite well, so I thought we'll give it a run in a rebuild, and this is the one we are going to use. It's a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-5-1, depending on how you want to look at it, and I think we will look to utilise the likes of Bahaji on the right hand side, and then we've got our players that can play through the middle. Johansson, obviously, Christiansen slots in nicely as a wing back on the left hand side. It's got a few weaknesses, I think, in terms of those two midfield players might get a little bit isolated, but hopefully if we can get strong enough players and obviously develop Johansson to get in and amongst teams, I think this can be a really successful tactic for this rebuild. And finally, before we move on to the end of Season 1, let's have a little look at the club vision page. So on day 1, you can see our job security is stable. In terms of the board's vision, we have already accepted that at the start of the save, but let's run through it quickly. So actionable objectives, they want us to work within a wage budget and grow the club's reputation. That is exactly what I want to do with the European competitions. Informational objectives, maximum 1-year contracts for players over the age of 33 and maximum 2-year contracts for first team players. Now it's interesting, they only want 2 years for first team players. A little bit strange because players like Rooney Bargi, I would want to put on a 20-year contract if I could, but obviously in real life that is the strategy they are using. I presume it's because most of their players get poached from outside of Denmark from other leagues, and they want to make sure that they're in the best position to be selling the players on as they go along. It's the only reason I can think for it. In terms of a 5-year plan, during the current season, they want us to be competitive within the Champions League. Obviously, that is one of the main objectives of the rebuild. Win the Superliga and win the DBU Pokalen. In terms of the board, the board feedback is compiled by Jan Harrit, who is our managing director. The board welcome you into the role and look forward to, with optimism, to your time in charge. And the board culture is to just sign players under the age of 23 for the first team. Obviously, that is something we want to do. Not too sure in terms of signings, or maybe there are a few wonder kids out there that we could go and pick up in the Scandinavian countries and maybe develop at the club, but then will they want to join us? It's going to be an interesting one to see what happens there. But I think we could use what's in our dev centre anyway to maybe progress some players into the next levels of their careers and maybe get them into the first team. In terms of the supporter feedback, this is compiled by Rasmus Nielsen, who is the supporter spokesperson. Supporters welcome you to the club and look forward to your time in charge with optimism. So they want to strive to make progress on and off the pitch, maintain the club's status as the most reputable team in Denmark, finish above Brøndby, finish above Midtjylland, finish above Lyngby, and win the Superliga. So yeah, as I said, if we're not winning the Superliga every single season, I probably will expect to get the sack, but I don't think it should be a problem. And obviously, it's now up to myself to go into Season 1, buy the right players, use the right tactics, and hopefully have a very successful first season. Here we go then, we have now pushed forwards. It's the end of the first season. The date is the 1st of June 2023, and that means that first season is in the history books. As always, we are going to kick off with the transfers and everything that happened in terms of transfer activity. Don't forget, we had no transfers in the first window, so everything that happened in the summer window was already done by the club. Anything you see from January is where we have gone forwards in the game and then begun to try and put a stamp on the team ourselves. So we have had some players leave the club. We have had some faces arrive at the club also. We're going to start off on the right hand side and we're going to have a little look at the players that have left first. So there wasn't that many that left. In fact, there was only 3 players that left, and the first that left was Peter Ankerson. He went to AIK for £400,000. He's a right back. He was unhappy. He was a bit miserable, wasn't playing many games. Came to me and said, I want to leave the club, and we basically wouldn't stand in his way. We only got £400,000 for him, which is probably fair at his age, 32 years old. And it freed up a slot also. It's a position that we had a few other players that could play in, so didn't really try and fight it off. Let him leave. He's gone to AIK for £400,000. The other players that we had leave the club was Emil Hoyland. He has gone to HamKam on loan. And we had Mamadou Karamoko go to Odd. He went on loan for a 70k total fee. So with a few players leaving the club, we had a few gaps in the registration for the squad anyway. And it meant that we went and started signing players. And the first player we went and signed for £4.8 million was Andreas Skelderup. The Wonder Kid of FM23 seems to be the name on everybody's lips. Pops up in every rebuild or every Let's Play. And we thought we'd just continue the trend and go out and purchase him. It made sense. He's a Scandinavian player who was playing for one of our rivals. Kind of just nicked him from Nordsjælland. Yeah, he's just everything that you want, isn't he? In a left winger, or can play up front. Quick with his dribbling. He's got first touch. He's got acceleration, technique, determination of 15. He's an absolute dream. The only problem with him was that when he came to the club, in his contract, he wanted a £9.5 million release clause, and he basically wanted it that he could not asked to leave whenever he wanted, but if somebody comes along and triggers that contract, we are absolutely screwed, because every time I've tried to renew the contract since, that clause is still in there. It is, you cannot turn it off. The agent is literally limiting you to £9.5 million. So we bought him for 4.8, I think it was. We're going to get 9.5 back. We know when he leaves, he might only be here for this season. By the next episode, he might be gone. Who knows? But it was well worth it to try and get a player who I think can push us forward and try and help us to build going forwards. The next player that came in was Sebastian Hausner. He came from AGF for £2.2 million. He's a 23-year-old central defender who has come from AGF. He is tall, 6'2". He's quick with 15 pace, 14 acceleration. He has good jumping reach of 15. His heading could do with a bit of improving at 10, and there are a few other stats there that look a little bit like Duff's, but kind of signing him just to be a rotation player, squad player. So I think he's a sound one going forwards. And we have a few aging players in the squad that this type of player can just come in and start playing games when we need them. The next player to come in was from Vålerenga. He's Osman Sahraoui. He has come for £2.3 million. Or Sahraoui, I think it is, not Sahraoui. Sahraoui. Yeah, he's an attacking midfielder who plays on the left. He also plays through the centre. I think he's going to be an absolutely fantastic footballer. Not come across him before in the game, so it was nice to find another kind of wonder kid who can come in and start having an impact. 21 years old, only 5'7", so he's a slight player who can get into little gaps and can kind of drift in off of either wing. And I think he's one of those types of players that we like, with a bit of versatility about his game that can help to improve the squad. The next player that come in was Victor Lind. He has come from Midtjylland for £3.5 million. And once again, the tactic here is to go out and sign players from your rivals. Has played football in Norway for HamKam. Also was playing for Midtjylland. We went in and picked him up. I thought he was cheap for what he is. His finishing is 12. His pace is 13. His acceleration is 13. But he is only 19 years old. I think he's very much one for the future. And I think he's got a goal in him too. Playing in our system where we move the ball quickly from the wide areas to the front. If we can get him in and play him as either one of those wide players or as a striker, I think he will score goals. The last player that we signed was Oliver Sorensen. He has come from Midtjylland also, £1.7 million. Absolute perfect for what we want. 21 years old, 6'2", can play in 2 or 3 different midfield positions. Obviously not very much use as an attacking midfielder, but can play there as a makeshift. But where we signed him really was to play next to Johannesson, or if the worst happens and Johannesson leaves, he's a player that I think we can develop into that kind of role in the middle of the park that we need him. As I said, 6'2", so he's tall enough to be battling for aerial duels. Pace of 14, acceleration of 12, bravery of 17, determination of 17. Hopefully that will see him through. And I think he's a player that we can really look to develop. Again, another one who has been out to Norway to play their football, came back, and now we have signed him for our team. I think that in terms of transfer business, we spent wisely. There was, I think, about £12 million in the bank once we got to January, with the 400,000 that we bought back in for Ankerson. I did think they were going to take some of that money away, but they allowed us to spend the money as we saw fit to do so. And I think the players that we invested in were sound investments. But as always, the question is, was the money really well spent? And the answer to that question is yes, the money was well spent. You can see, starting off on the left-hand side of the screen, we have won the Superliga once again. Now, I get it. I'm going to get comments. You're managing the best team in Denmark. You should be winning the Superliga. I do know that. I really do know that. That's why I said earlier on in the video, if I can't win the Superliga in Denmark, I shouldn't be in the job and I will probably be sacked. So I'm glad to say that we have won the league. And not just won it, we have really blown them away, winning by 17 points from the next team down. We'll break that down in a minute because we'll move on to the other things. As I said, Champions League and a European footprint is what I am here for, but I got dealt a real difficult card in the first season of the Champions League. Now, obviously, in the first season, we still are in the old format, or the current format as we're in. It's going to change from next season, and it meant that we got drawn in a group with Bayern Munich, Sporting and Seville. I expect us to finish bottom of the group. We actually got 6 points and finished in third. If we show you who we beat as well, it's quite surprising to see us beating Bayern Munich 2-0 at home and Seville 4-1 at home, which means that many teams aren't going to like coming to the Parken Stadium anyway, and that might help us in the future in terms of Champions League wins, and we'll show you why. We did lose 4 games, all of them away games. Seville, Bayern, Sporting. And Sporting did come to the Parken Stadium and beat us. But finishing in third place had a blessing, because it meant that even though we were out of the Champions League, we got moved across to the Europa League. And as you can see, we grabbed that competition by the horns and really ran with it. We were only knocked out in the semi-finals by Arsenal, and even then it was only because we came up against a team that was better than us on the day. If we go into the Europa League and break it down for you, we came into the competition at the knockout playoff round, when I can speak English. We were drawn against Malmo. We won that first game 4-1 on aggregate. In the round of 16, we were drawn against Monaco, and we beat them 2-0 on aggregate. In the quarterfinals, we got drawn against Real Betis. We beat them 3-0 on aggregate. And then in the semi-finals, as I said, we got drawn against Arsenal. We lost 3-1 on aggregate. We did draw the second game 1-1. But it was just a case of coming up against a stronger team who went on to advance in the competition. And I don't think that final has been played. In fact, it has been played. Manchester United are the current holders. They beat Arsenal 1-0 after extra time in the final. It does literally say in big letters, doesn't it? Title holders Manchester United. So, yeah, that was what happened in the Europa League. And then in the Pokalen, we got knocked out in the semi-final by Nordjylland. And as you will see in a couple of minutes when we go to the Club Vision tab, that has not gone down well with anybody. It's a competition that I really wanted to win, and I thought we would win, but we got knocked out. So yeah, that went down like a lead balloon. But let's turn that negative into a positive by looking at the Superliga and break down our season. So in Denmark, they have 3 different phases to their season. So in the first preliminary phase, in fact, let's break it down even further by looking at the stages properly. So in the preliminary phase, we played 22 games. We won 18 of them. We drew 2. We lost 2. We scored 53 goals, only conceded 17. It gave us goal difference of 36, and we scored 56 points. So that means that at that phase, we were 9 points clear anyway, and it meant that the top teams all qualified to go into the next phase, or when the league splits into 2. So you can see they've got the Championship group, which is the top lot of 6, and the relegation stage, which is the bottom lot of 6. So in terms of the Championship group, I think there is a way that they aggregate what you've already got and add it to the games at the end. I'm not 100% sure of how it goes, but we just rolled with it and continued on. So by the end of the season, we had played 32 games. We won 24 of them. We drew 3. We lost 5. We scored 75. Conceded 27. Had a goal difference of 48 and finished on 75 points, which put us 17 points clear of Randers in second place. Now, whilst I was just thinking about the league format, if you are familiar with Danish football and know exactly how the league works, please educate me, put it in the comment section down below and tell me how this league format works. Now, in terms of what's happened already, not too fussed because we have won the league anyway, but if there's a better way to understand it and a better way for me to know what it is, I really would like that to happen. So let's run through some stats then. So our top goal scorer was Cornelius with 22 goals. He was also our best player in terms of the average ratings with 7.45. Clayson getting 7.43. He then got 10 assists. Skelderup getting 8 despite only signing in January. And then Falk got 7. In terms of player of the match awards, we had Cornelius with 6. Matt Ryan got 14 clean sheets. Luckily for us, no discipline issues across the season. And then we didn't really have too many in the bottom categories, but Dix did have 4.75 dribbles per 90 minutes. So a fantastic first season has come to a close. Obviously winning the Superliga, which was expected fully. Getting to the semi-finals of the Europa League has helped to push the club forwards in terms of getting eyes on it and building that reputation. And unfortunately, we got knocked out in the semi-finals of that Pokalen, and there probably will be consequences for that. Let's continue on the review by looking at the finances for the next season. So we start off with a balance of £52.4 million. The board are going to give us a generous £17.1 million to spend. Now obviously you've seen the way that this format is going to work, signing Scandinavian players and younger players to try and develop the team going forward. I think we're going to get a lot for our £17 million. There are obviously some deals that we can do on some of the cheaper wonder kids maybe, and looking within the Danish league there is a whole host of Scandinavian wonder kids that we can try and poach. In terms of the wage budget, we have a generous wage budget there too, with nearly £90,000 available. The wage budget is £437,000, we're spending £347,000. The finances in general look very, very good. I think that we're not going to have any financial difficulty in this save. If you remember the Villa one, it was kind of all over the place in terms of going into massive debt and then relying on competition winnings. I think this is a well-run club that is just going to be able to look after itself as we go along. Let's have a quick rundown then of this club vision page. So job security is still secure. In terms of the actionable objectives, it's still work within the wage budget. We're on course. Grow the club's reputation, reserving judgment. Minimum 2-year contracts for first team players now. So the 33-year-old clause is gone. For next season, in the 5-year plan, they want to be competitive in the UEFA Champions League. They want to win the Superliga, and then our contract is up for renewal. Now, in terms of the board feedback, this is where it could get interesting. So we were given a B-. To summarise, the board are pleased with our management of the team. Last season's successes remain fresh in the memories, and it's taken into account. So the board culture, sign players under the age of 23 for the first team. They are very pleased, and they now do not want us to sign players over the age of 30. So that's pretty achievable. I don't think there are too many Scandinavian players out there above the age of 30 that we want to go and look for. There might be the odd one or two here, so I suppose we could bend the rules a little bit, but maybe there's a bit of leeway if we could find somebody who's a bit of a legend and then bring them back. Maybe we could get away with it. But in terms of notable highlights, very pleased with the comprehensive 4-0 victory against Brøndby. Impressed with a 4-0 victory against AGF. Pleased with the positive atmosphere in the changing room. They were disappointed about the 6-7 Pokeland semi-final second leg aggregate loss against Nordsjælland. As I said, it was an absolute crazy game. They were disappointed with the 1-2 Superliga Championship group defeat also against Nordsjælland. So the board really are concerned about Nordsjælland. In terms of the supporters, we get a B- from them. They want us to sign high reputation players now, which is going to be a little bit crazy. Like I said, if there's one or two maybe Danish legends we can bring back, it's going to have to happen because they're the only types of high reputation players we can have with the rules in place. They want to maintain the club's reputation as the most reputable team in Denmark. That should be fine. Finish above Brøndby, finish above Midtjylland, which should also be fine because we aim to win the league every season, and they want to continue to win the Superliga. So with their notable highlights, they're pleased about the 4-0 victory against Brøndby, the 4-0 victory against AGF, and the 3-0 aggregate win over Betis in the quarterfinals. Or it says aggregate win in the quarterfinals second leg. Either way, they're happy that we beat Betis. Notable criticisms: disappointed with Victor Lind's recent performances, disappointed with Ori Stein Oscarsson's recent performances, disappointed with Paul Mokero, his recent performances. So 3 players that are on the fringes of the first team. I know Victor Lind has just come in, but obviously we're trying to find his position within the group, so I don't really worry too much about the criticisms, but obviously the positives coming out of the season are good despite that Pokeland loss. Finally, before we wrap this one up, I'm going to have a little look at the squad planner and the best 11. Now, obviously, there's 2 different versions of this. We're going to start off with the one that says Scout Report Best 11. It gives us a few strengths and weaknesses, so maybe we can look at where we can improve the team going forwards. But let's start off by running through the players. So you can see that Ryan is our goalkeeper now. Christiansen, Vavro, Boylson and Dix are our back 4. Falk, Lerager in the midfield, with Skelderup, Clayson, Bargy and Cornelius at the top of the pitch. So that's probably a fair assessment of where we are. There are 1 or 2 players that could be interchanged in there, but so far this is probably the best that we are going to get in terms of a starting 11. Running through some of the strengths and weaknesses then. So bravery, agility, natural fitness, determination, composure, dribbling, passing. Top goal scorer, Cornelius, getting 22 goals. Vision, decisions, technique, flair, work rate. and teamwork, just to name a few. And on the weaknesses side, maybe something we could look at, it's long throws, players struggling for form. Luther Singh has not played well. Heading, command of area, corners, free kick taking, goals against, and overall depth. So it's trying to build the first team squad whilst filling it with younger players or established Scandinavian players. So maybe they have a point there in terms of the depth, but hopefully we can improve that as we go along. So looking at the squad planner the other way, so our best 11 and our best youth 11, we've got Matt Ryan in goal, Christiansen, Vavro, Balson, Dix, Falk, Leraga, Skelderup, Clayson, Bargy and Cornelius. And then the younger players coming through, we've got Dithmer, Rorsted, Jensen, Halsgaard, Gellert, Zachariasen, Isaac Johansson, Sharari, Froholt, Goodmanson and Hoyland up top. So definitely places that we can be filling, but in terms of what the squad was when we first took over, it was in a really good place anyway. So maybe we're going to lose one or two players. You can see that Zeka isn't in there, despite the fact he was club captain at the start of the save. So maybe there's room for improvement in terms of that. Once we knock a few of the higher earnings off, then maybe we can bring players in on slightly more wages and have a look at improving overall. But I'm really pleased to have got Skelder up in, even if it only lasts for one season. Maybe we could look at another striker, although Cornelius is the type of player that seems to do well in the match engine, so maybe there's no need to panic there. Bargy is going to be a long stay in the team, hopefully. And then the midfield, we're going to swap that around. I think Falk and Johannesson myself are the better pairing, but the game obviously wants to put established first teamers in over youth in this version. So not much really to say in terms of where we're going to strengthen. It's going to come down to where we can find experienced Scandinavian players and then what we have got coming through the ranks. If we promote most of the players there in the purple, it means we're going to have quite a good squad depth, although it doesn't look like it in the game because we're going to have quite a lot of youngsters. So something to build on for Season 2. Obviously, we have won the Superliga. We really now need to go and win the Pokalen, and we can look at trying to build on that European run that we've just had. Getting to the semi-finals of the Europa League was a good adventure. Right then, if you're still here at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, if you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button to support the channel, I really do appreciate it. Every single person that's taken the time to do that across the past couple of months, it's been absolutely fantastic watching the growth on the channel. I cannot thank you enough. Before you go, don't forget there are other things on the channel such as tactic testing, Wonder Kid videos, tips, hints, tutorials, a little bit of something for everybody. You name it, it's probably there. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you on the next episode of the FC Kopenhagen rebuild.